Well, it's summertime, and we hope that you're enjoying yourself and enjoying this time with family. You know, during the summer here on Stay of the Water, we have our community conversations where we're talking with organizations in the 757 and the Commonwealth of Virginia that are making an impact and doing the work on the ground. And today we have with us someone that is deciding to harness the wind energy for a green environment. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our 2025 Community Conversation Series. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us as you always do on this Sunday morning as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. You know, we have some of the greatest alumni and greatest stakeholders in the world. We couldn't do what we do without you. That's right. This summer, we reached a half a decade of broadcasting here from WSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. We're excited to do what we're doing, and we couldn't do it without you. So for over half a decade now, we have been bringing movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. And during that time period, we've transitioned and we've grown and we've added new series to what we do throughout the year as we give you 52 shows every year on this particular air. And during the summer, we have our Community Conversation series. The Community Conversation is to bring movers and shakers that are doing the work on the ground and that are shaking and moving in innovative areas here in the 757 and the Commonwealth of Virginia. And joining us today, we have with us a legend in communications and media. Telling we're excited to have him here with us this Sunday morning, but none other than Mr. Joel Rubin from Rubin Communications Group. Mr. Rubin, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. And can I start off by saying I'm thrilled to be on WNSB because my career in broadcasting started at WUVA at the University of Virginia. And so without that experience, I would not have had the years and years that I had in broadcasting. So I'm thrilled to be on WNSB with you, Eric.
Hey, Joel, I really appreciate it. And I'm glad you mentioned that you started on a university radio station because, it's been the training ground for a lot of phenomenal media professionals. Of course, yourself and the many people that UVA have produced, the alums, and of course here in Norfolk State, the many people that have gone on to do great things at record labels and in movies and the like, and they're launching their own initiatives. So, when they talk about is radio still needed? Especially with the cuts that we saw, unfortunately, in Washington, the answer is absolutely yes, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got my start in radio. Obviously, it's changed a lot. When I first got to this market, my first job was at WNOR. People know it more as FM 99, although I was on the AM side. And we had a 5-person news department. And back then, there were about 4 or 5 other stations in this market that also had 5 and 6 and 7, 8-person radio stations. Today, sadly, there are about none of the commercial stations. I mean, WNSB, I don't know exactly what you guys have, but WHRO is building a news department. But, the commercial stations, I mean, I tell people all the time, back when I started in the mid-'70s here, we had so much media covering stories between multiple radio stations, 3 TV stations, 4 newspapers, morning and afternoon on each side of the water. So you had a lot of competition to get stories. The people in this market were much better served in terms of news coverage back then than they are today. And it's sad, but it's just a result of how the advertising revenue has shifted from TV, radio, newspaper over to the internet and such, and audiences have moved with them. So it was a heady time back then covering news in this market.
Absolutely. Let's continue there. We're going to talk about, your venture now that you are involved in. It's called Wednesdays. And, of course, it's a play on words where you're looking at the wind and then, of course, the day that it comes out, but also the impact that you're making. But, I'm so excited to have you on because, like I said, you are a legend in media and broadcasting. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about, your career. You started UVA, of course, you started radio and so forth, but then did you end up on television? Because that's where most persons know you from. That's where,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I met you and engaged with you and first starting out. Tell us how your trajectory took you from UVA to television.
Well, I had some great people I worked with in college radio, and they got jobs down here and recommended to a news director at WNOR, hey, you ought to hire this guy. So, I started out covering the peninsula for WNOR Radio, working out of their bureau on Washington Avenue. And back then, WNOR had a sort of relationship with Wavy TV that because they didn't have a peninsula reporter, they said, well, if you go out and cover something, here's a Bell and Howell silent film camera, go shoot some footage, put it on the Trailways bus from downtown Newport News to Portsmouth, and they processed it and used my voice that I recorded, and that's how I started at television. And then I moved into becoming the sports director, actually, for about a year or so, and then decided I really wanted to be back in news, so I became a news reporter. I was the anchorman for 1 year. I also had multiple jobs on the assignment desk. I was assistant news director, so I did administrative, and then got back into reporting like for the last 10 years or so. So from basically, 1981 to 91, I was reporting. I covered politics, covered the General Assembly for 8 sessions, covered national elections and, of course, local ones, but I also did a feature beat called Joel Rubin's Virginia, where I ran around the state of Virginia doing some really cool feature stories on different kinds of stories that I came up with. I've always enjoyed doing features, and so it was great. Worked with some really incredible people at Wavy, some of whom are still there, and then stayed there until 91, and then decided I could try my luck in business, and then I went into started my own PR firm in 1991. And then, as I was building the firm, Channel 13 came to me and said, hey, would you like to host a talk show? We have a half hour open on Sunday mornings. And like you, I went for it, and then we called it On the Record. And so every Sunday for the next 17 years, I was hosting On the Record, which was a unique show for television in the state. We were interviewing every, governor and senator and mayors, but also a lot of interesting issue stories that we did, and I think the market still needs a show like that, but it went away in 2008, and so for the last 17 years I haven't been in broadcasting, but on a regular basis. But what I'm doing today, which we'll talk about, is using the same skills that I learned as a reporter to write stories, and so I feel like I'm back doing what I did at the beginning. I'm just not doing it for Wavy TV or the Virginian Pilot or something like that. So I've always loved journalism, always loved writing, and that's from high school on.
As a matter of fact, when I started out, just again, someone asked, hey, would you like to come on and talk about this? Actually, it was the Obama reelection. Then it led to something about the Constitution and more politics. And of course, when I saw that happening over and over again, I started to look for individuals that I saw that actually did it because you don't know what you're really doing until you see someone that's done it. And you're one of the first persons that I saw doing it. And a lot of what, I do, I picked up some of that from you. So just.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So again, when I mentioned that you're a legend in this area, you definitely are. You trail.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm that, but I do enjoy, having the opportunity to cover stories. Met a lot of people clearly that helped me when I went into business, because I'd done all of my journalism here in Hampton Roads. And when you're, as you know, Eric, when you're covering politics, you get to, and clearly across the region. So, I started covering city council meetings in Newport News and Hampton, and then I covered Virginia Beach, and so I was everywhere. And then covering the General Assembly is a really unique opportunity, because you're sitting there in that one square block 5 days a week, and every issue imaginable is coming across your transom, and you got not just the legislators and the governor and everybody but the lobbyists and people who come up to Richmond to plead their case for this bill or that bill. And so you begin to really understand a lot about issues and what motivates people. You understand Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals. And so I saw, a big change. I mean, I was, covering Richmond when we got our first African-American governor. I went sort of from Robb to Beliles to Wilder. That was my sort of time up there, and got to know all of them, pretty well as who they ran against. And I'll just never forget, sitting in the gallery sometimes at the state Senate, looking at a lot of legends in Virginia government from, Hunter Andrews and all those guys, and guys in the House and the Senate. So it was a very heady time to be up there, and I got to be with a lot of other great journalists because there were ones who covered Richmond back then. Every newspaper, and, you can imagine, from the Washington Post and the Fredericksburg paper in Richmond and Hampton Roads and Roanoke, everybody was covering it, and a lot of those guys have been covering it for years. So I just sat back sometimes and just was in awe of the talent, how they figured out a story, the questions that they asked at news conferences, the history that they had. I mean, that's, to me, just being able to understand, because I'm a big believer that in the history determines the present, and we're just we're just moving along, okay? And sometimes we go backwards and sometimes we go forwards, but the public speaks in who they elect. And sometimes they elect really great people, sometimes not so great people, but those are the people that end up making the decision, and it's always fun watching what they do.
Absolutely. And again, I'll say, on the record, is still needed today. So you never know. It may make a comeback, right?
Well, I enjoy doing interviews like you do. I really enjoy asking questions. I've always liked asking challenging questions. I don't sort of take sides. I mean, I think anybody that came on my show knew that I was going to ask you fair questions, but I wasn't going to, just do a stump speech for you. And we had a lot of really good debates, some candidate debates, issue debates. I love sitting there. Sometimes they really got into it, and I would sit back and go, hey, this is great television. And, so anyway, it was good. And I like the fact that a lot of these, people who came on thought this is, coming around my table was something you needed to do if you really wanted to show that you knew your issues or could debate your issues and could, back up your contentions.
Absolutely. Well, listen, you are definitely still looked upon and as that standard here in this area in politics. So appreciate your career and the work you've done. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric LaVille, and you're joining us this Sunday morning for our 2025 Community Conversation Series. Today we have with us a local media giant and legend in the area who's chosen another area to focus on, and it's called Wednesdays. That's right. His initiative that harnesses the wind and comes out of Wednesdays, but also focuses on a green environment. Joe, tell us about why Wednesdays and what it's all about.
Well, I mean, I have a public relations firm, Rubin Communications Group, that I've had since 1991. Right now it's me and my wife, and I couldn't do it without her. She came on about a year and a half into it, and I said, I can't do all this back office stuff. And so she had to do a quick learning curve as to how to run a business so I could be out there doing, the stuff I do. And so I give her all the credit in the world for the fact that we've been around since 1991. So that's 34 years. We had as many as 6-7 employees at one time, but now it's sort of down to 2, and the main one is Dominion Energy. And I went to Dominion Energy. I had become pretty aware in this market, how can you not be, of the strength of the maritime community, whether it's shipping, shipyard, ship repair, all the shops that do work on, but also the attorneys and everything else that feeds off our maritime culture. And we have the largest maritime workforce in the country here. I mean, we are and always have been a major, because of our port and because of the Navy, et cetera, and coal and everything else. We've always been a major maritime port. And so I got to know it a lot better, more so in business than I was when I was a reporter, and really began to appreciate what their challenges were and how we here in Hampton Roads are a great place for anything related to the ocean. And when Dominion Energy decided that they were going to bid on and won this huge lease out in the Atlantic Ocean to build this wind farm, and then they announced it's going to be the 176 wind turbines, the largest in the country, one of the largest in the world. I went, wow, that's a big industry to come
right.
to this region at one time. And keep in mind, this was during Biden and Northam and such, so it was, there was a lot of support in government for it, and they saw that this could be a real boon to Hampton Roads. And look, we've got the ocean, we got the bays, we got the Elizabeth River and the James River, and we have a lot of industry up and down here, and we're ready for the next thing that relates to maritime. And so I couldn't imagine a better market in the country to be the hub for this than us. And as a matter of fact, they said the two best industrial sites on the East Coast for this offshore wind were Portsmouth Marine Terminal, which was basically vacant and not being used by the state of Virginia, and what became Fairwinds Landing, which was owned by Norfolk Southern, the old Lamberts Point coal terminals. And they were both being totally underutilized. And so as this thing began to roll out, I mean, the whole country was like, well, if anything's going to happen, it's going to be in Hampton Roads. And so here we have the largest wind farm. Dominion had the lease for that. We've got these sites. We've got all the other companies that are around here. So anyway, I went to Dominion and I said, I could help you, or I'd like to help you. And they said, okay, we could use some help, with public relations. And the best thing was, and why I've loved what I'm doing so much, is that they didn't make me do what other sort of PR people do, which is they have people to do that, which is, placing stories and doing the general community relations and all the other stuff that I've done many times, for other clients. They sort of let me figure out what I could do that would be beneficial to making public aware of this project, to build a culture around green energy, clean energy, environmental awareness. And so that's kind of how it started. Workforce development we were not doing a very good job, frankly, here in training enough people for the trades, whether it's for shipyards or for offshore wind. And so I don't take credit for this, but I saw that this had to happen, and it has. We've been more programs starting at various different levels so that we can meet the demands of this industry. And, we thought maybe some more companies would come here, but, we've got an administration now in Washington that's not as favorable to green energy as I think it should be, and that's hampered the industry. But at the same time, we're getting a huge cable manufacturing plant in Chesapeake. We've got other business that's happening at Kelowna Shipyard and other places. We've got a number of companies that have come to town here from overseas that have established basically their North American headquarters right here in Hampton Roads. I'd like to think there's going to be more of those, whether it's offices or it's warehouses or whatever they're doing. And so I'm just, felt like this is happening, but it needed to be understood and promoted. So I told them I'm going to look at this project through the eyes of the region, not so much through the eyes of the company. The company had to hit certain milestones because they had to get permits from the Virginia and from the federal government, which is a laborious process. And so what I was doing was, sort of talking about how, the value of wind, okay? And so anything with wind. In fact, I talk about wind songs and wind books and movies with the name wind I'll do anything around the word wind. I've got Tidewater Winds, which is a concert band. They're the official concert band of the Wednesday campaign. I've got another band, a show band called Brass Wind that plays at our Why Not Wednesdays every year at the Sandler Center, and they're my official show band and things like that. So I go in a lot of different directions. I want to make it readable. It's every week, every Wednesday at 8:30 in the morning. Thousands of people turn on their computers, and there is my newsletter. It has about 4 or 5 stories in it, not real long, some nice pictures. And so, in about 7-8 minutes, you can read the whole thing. And you learn about some great people that are in this region doing good stuff and and also about this project. So it's, for me, it's fun. I'm being a reporter again.
Absolutely. When you mention offshore wind energy in Dominion, I remember about 2019, I came in knowledge of what Dominion was doing. And of course, on the Hill, you see them, doing a lot up there and basically trying to win approval and across the local area. But I was really impressed with them diving into it and then working across the board. But to your point, the education of it, a lot of people needed that, and because you're talking a wind farm of 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, beautiful coast.
Well, 27 to 45 miles out. I mean, that wind farm is the size of 2 Norfolks. So if you took the entire city of Norfolk and doubled it, that's the size of that wind farm. So it is a big piece of ocean. And in fact, I was stunned, given that between the Navy and commercial shipping and fisheries and everything else, but they all got together and figured out where this lease site should be and how it would have the least impact on these various other uses of the ocean. I mean, the ocean's huge, right? But still, somebody's out there using it.
Absolutely.
And so there was a lot that had to be taken into consideration. This right whale, which migrates from, like up in Canada, New England, down to the islands every year, and they, of course, pass through us. So, we had to be careful. It's an endangered species, and so as one of the things they've had to do to build this wind farm is to drive basically piles, what are called monopiles, into the ocean, 176 of them, but not do it during the time when these right whales are migrating. So between the months of November and May, they don't do anything. That's when they're migrating. So they are doing it again right now, but have to stop at Halloween. So in the meantime, they put other parts on the tops of these monopiles, and then what are called nacelles that have all the electronics, and then these blades, which are as long as a football field. I mean, the sheer size of this. I mean, I tell people between the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, a new tunnel, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and then this project, we must have 3 of the biggest engineering projects in the world happening at one time right here in Hampton Roads. It's really stunning. And, I mean, what they're doing to Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, boring those tubes, is incredible. And what we're doing out, in the ocean is pretty amazing, too. I don't get out there that much, but I know there's a lot of vessels out there that are, laying cable, transferring crews in and out, looking out for species, installing monopiles, barges and all sorts of things. I mean, I think it's like 53 different vessels are part of this project that have never been in this market before. So you can see how that's a boon to our ship repair people, because all of them may need some work. They need pier space. They all need agents. I mean, every ship has an agent that comes in and out of here because they got to deal with customs and get stuff that, whether it's food or whatever they need. So, companies like Capes and Host and all these others now have more vessels that they have to, help manage and deal with the ship owners who are halfway around the world. I mean, this is the maritime industry. And so a lot of people aren't aware of everything that's going on, but in the Port of Virginia. I mean, they got a big use now for the Portsmouth Marine Terminal, which if anybody leaves the Midtown Tunnel or drives on the Western Freeway, just look over there and you see just an amazing array of equipment.
When you talk about the wind itself and harnessing that, and the green energy piece, it's not just the environmental part, but it's also the political part. And the fact that, Dominion has been able to pull all these purchases together, of course, is a huge lobbying effort. Of course, as you mentioned, the administration now is not too friendly to the green energy, cutting a lot of money from it. However, the other part is bringing across the different local and community factions to support it as well. So one thing that we noticed that you've done is that you say Wednesdays is a day of the week when businesses of all kinds, schools, media partners, government agencies, arts groups, other organizations, they interact in Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads to talk about clean energy, a green environment, and the power of the wind. Tell us a little bit about that particular gathering.
Well, look, I don't when I was first aware of this whole project with Dominion, I didn't even think about the fact that it had to come ashore. So that meant cables had to come from, 30 miles. They got 3 major substations out in the middle of the ocean. One's built so far, 2 more are coming. So think about a substation that you see when you're driving down the highways around here. Now I got 3 of them. And so those are aggregating the power from these 176 wind turbines. And then there's cables that are placed down on the bottom of the ocean, and they're bringing it across 9 different sets of cables coming in at what was called Camp Pendleton or State Military Reservation. Then it goes to what's called a switching station over next to Oceana Naval Air Station. And then it goes above ground about 13, 14 miles to another big substation next to Fentress Field in Chesapeake, and that's when all the power goes up on the grid. I mean, it's a $10 billion, operation. And the fact of the matter is they're getting it done pretty quickly. I mean, it's going to be done by the end of next year. I'm told it to build another nuclear plant, which we probably need some more nuclear power, takes 10 years from start to finish. So this is an amazing thing that all these companies, again, most of them from other parts of the country, Siemens Gamesa, which is, from another part of the world, they're providing the blades and the cells and the turbine towers, and you got these other companies that are providing the monopiles and the transition pieces, and we got the companies from, again, all over the world. They're providing vessels out there. I mean, this is, if you step back and just look at how you put something as big as this together in this day and age, when this is a brand new industry for the United States, it's quite amazing. And I've really enjoyed talking to these companies and getting to know what they do, how they're working together. I mean, this is Dominion's first. I mean, they're developing this wind farm. I mean, that's not what they've done. I mean, they've, built other, generation plants, but not this. And I think they're doing an amazing job. And it brought in great people, and everybody's learning from it, and trying to mitigate the negative impacts on people as much as possible. And I feel like maybe Wednesdays has helped people to understand it and feel like it's a good thing for this region. I mean, the other regions of the country have other industries. Our major industry, let's face it, is, Eric, it's what the port, defense, and tourism, right? And it's all based on the ocean.
Absolutely.
And that's the ocean is our major natural resource. And now we've got a big wind farm, off our coast, and heck, Dominion, we'll see who the next president is and such, wants to build another one next to it. And then they've got a third of the one down off Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, about 25 miles off that coast, that they like to do too. So they are definitely engaged in renewable energy. There's a lot of solar going on, as you know. And so, Dominion was told by the state of Virginia, we want you to, I think it's by 2045, don't quote me, we want you to be doing 100% renewable energy. Mm-hmm. And so we're doing our part to get off fossil fuels in Virginia. It's still an all of the above thing because of the demand, so we're still using gas and coal and et cetera. Nuclear is huge, and it's going to become bigger. But, the demands for electricity today, because of, as my friend Doug Smith of the Alliance calls it, the electrification of everything, we need it in Virginia. And so this is, a major contribution to it is, and this could be 660,000 households will be just off this one wind farm. That's a quarter of the households in Virginia will be powered by this one wind farm.
Absolutely. Well, listen, just as you were innovative in broadcast media, this is truly an innovative concept that you have pioneered.
Thank you.
To educate the community, the greater community, Hampton Roads, about the power of wind, but just not Hampton Roads, but it's going to travel far and wide. Wednesdays, that's WINDSDAYS.com, a play on the actual day of the month. Wednesdays, because the wind is blowing our way. According
by the way, if you're not getting the newsletter, you can go on our website, Wednesdays.com, just like you spelled it, WINDSDAYS.com, and you can sign up to get the newsletter every week. It comes out every Wednesday morning.
Absolutely. It says Wednesdays is at least a 5-year-long campaign, meaning there's ample time for anyone wishing to join the movement. Opportunity is knocking at our shores. Joe Rubin, again, thank you so much for joining us here on Stay the Water. You're definitely a mover and shaker, definitely a legend, and definitely Wednesdays is worth the read, everybody. I'm signed up to it. I get the newsletter every Wednesday. It's worth the read. Mr. Rubin, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And until next time, those of you, be good, be great. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.